What happens when a man who callously discarded his pregnant wife for a younger model gets a front row seat to her spectacular comeback? Ethan thought he had it all. A hot new girlfriend, who he boasted looked like a movie star, and the freedom from his boring old life. He couldn't stop rubbing his ex-wife Olivia's nose in it, but he never imagined that while he was busy showing off his cheap imitation, Olivia was being quietly courted by one of the world's most elusive billionaires. Get ready for a story of ultimate revenge, where the red carpet becomes a battlefield and a scorned woman's triumph is witnessed by the entire world. Ethan Thorne was a man who collected beautiful things. His penthouse apartment in the heart of Manhattan's Soho district was a testament to his exquisite, if somewhat soulless, taste. Polished chrome and stark white leather furniture sat on a vast expanse of imported Italian marble. Abstract art by fashionable, up-and-coming artists adorned the walls, each piece a calculated investment. His watch was a Patek Philippe. His suits were exclusively Tom Ford, and his car, a sleek black Aston Martin DB11, purred with the promise of power and prestige. And then there was Isabella, his latest and most prized acquisition. Isabella Rossi was, in Ethan's own bombastic words, a real-life movie star. With her cascade of raven hair, sultry almond-shaped eyes, and a figure that seemed to have been sculpted by the gods themselves, she was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went. A 24-year-old aspiring actress and Instagram model with a following of moderately impressed bots and thirsty men, she was the perfect accessory for a man like Ethan. He paraded her around the city's most exclusive restaurants, a smug grin permanently etched on his face as he basked in the envious stares of other men. "Look at her," he'd say to his friends, his voice a low proprietary murmur, as Isabella preened for a selfie at their table at Balthazar. "She's got that Sophia Loren thing going on, doesn't she? A classic beauty. You can't find that anymore." His friends, a sycophantic chorus of yes-men who benefited from his generosity, would nod in enthusiastic agreement. What Ethan conveniently omitted from his triumphant narrative was the woman he had so recently discarded to make room for his new movie star, his wife of 5 years, Olivia. And she was pregnant with his child. Olivia Thorne, soon to be Olivia Parker again, was the antithesis of Isabella. Where Isabella was a dazzling firework, Olivia was a quiet, steady flame. She had a gentle beauty with warm, honey-blonde hair that she often wore in a simple, elegant chignon, and intelligent, kind eyes that seemed to see right through Ethan's carefully constructed facade. She was a talented landscape architect, a woman who found beauty in the natural world, not in the fleeting trends of fashion and fame. She had been the grounding force in Ethan's life, the one who had supported him when he was just a struggling entrepreneur with a dream. She had been his partner in every sense of the word, and he had repaid her loyalty with a betrayal so profound it had shattered her world. The day he had left her was seared into her memory like a brand. She had been 6 months pregnant, her body changing in ways that were both miraculous and terrifying. She had been planning the nursery, a room filled with light and love, a sanctuary for the child they had both so desperately wanted. He had come home from a business trip to Miami, his face a mask of cold indifference. He had told her with all the emotion of a man discussing a failed business venture that he was in love with someone else. Someone younger, someone more exciting, someone who didn't have stretch marks and morning sickness. "I need to be with someone who inspires me." "Liv," he had said, the casual shortening of her name a cruel twist of the knife. "Someone who makes me feel alive." He had already packed his bags. Her world, once a vibrant landscape of shared dreams and future hopes, had been reduced to a barren wasteland in the space of a single heartless conversation. The divorce had been swift and brutal. Ethan, ever the pragmatist, had offered her a generous settlement, a gilded cage to keep her quiet and out of his new glamorous life. He had kept the Soho penthouse, of course. Olivia had taken the money and retreated to a quiet tree-lined street in Brooklyn, to a brownstone that she had once dreamed of renovating with him. Now she would do it alone. But Ethan couldn't just leave her be. He seemed to derive a perverse pleasure from flaunting his new life in her face. He would post endless pictures of himself and Isabella on Instagram. Their lives, a curated montage of private jets, exotic vacations, and champagne-fueled parties. He'd tag her in the posts, a digital slap in the face. He'd even had the audacity to send her a Christmas card, featuring a professionally shot photo of him and Isabella, clad in matching cashmere sweaters, grinning inanely in front of a roaring fire in a ski lodge in Aspen. On the back, in his neat, arrogant script, he had written, "Wishing you a Merry Christmas. Hope you're doing well." Olivia had thrown the card in the fireplace, watching as the flames consumed their smug, perfect faces. But the hurt remained a dull, persistent ache in her chest. She was carrying his child, a constant living reminder of his betrayal, and he was living a life of consequence-free bliss with a woman who was little more than a child herself. Her friends, a fiercely protective circle of women who had known her since college, were incandescent with rage. "He's a monster." Liv, her best friend Chloe, had said, her voice trembling with anger. "A soulless, narcissistic monster. How can you be so calm?" But Olivia wasn't calm. She was drowning. The joy she should have been feeling about her impending motherhood was tainted by the bitterness of her heartbreak. She would sit in the half-finished nursery, surrounded by boxes of unassembled furniture and untouched baby clothes, and weep until she had no tears left. She felt like a ghost in her own life, a silent observer of her own slow-motion collapse. Ethan, meanwhile, was blissfully unaware of the depths of her despair. Or perhaps he was aware and simply didn't care. His world was a bubble of self-congratulation, and Olivia was a distant, unpleasant memory that he could easily dismiss. He was too busy curating his image as the man who had it all. He had even started a blog, a pretentious, self-aggrandizing platform where he pontificated on everything from investment strategies to the art of living a bespoke life. He wrote a post titled, "Trading Up Why I Chose a Life of Authenticity and Passion," that was a thinly veiled justification for leaving Olivia. He didn't mention her by name, of course. He simply referred to his previous chapter as a time of stagnation and compromise. He wrote about the importance of surrounding oneself with vibrant, inspiring people, and it was clear to anyone who knew him that he was talking about Isabella. The post went viral in their small, privileged circle. People whispered about it at dinner parties, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. Olivia's name was on everyone's lips, the wronged woman, the discarded wife. She felt the weight of their stares, the sting of their pity, every time she ventured out of her brownstone. Ethan, on the other hand, was basking in the attention. He saw himself as a maverick, a man who had dared to break free from the suffocating confines of a conventional life. He was a pioneer of personal fulfillment, a guru of self-actualization. He was also a first-class fool, and his downfall was destined to be as spectacular as his rise. But for now, he was on top of the world, his movie star girlfriend on his arm, the city at his feet. He had no idea that the woman he had so carelessly cast aside was about to rewrite her own story, and that her comeback would be more dazzling than anything he could ever have imagined. The seeds of his humiliation were being sown in the quiet tree-lined streets of Brooklyn, in the heart of a woman who was slowly, painstakingly putting the pieces of her shattered life back together. And when she was whole again, she would be a force to be reckoned with. Ethan Thorne, the man who thought he had everything, was about to lose the one thing he had never truly valued, his dignity. The first few months after Ethan left were a blur of pain and progesterone. Olivia moved through her days in a fog of grief, her pregnancy a bittersweet reminder of a future that had been stolen from her. She would wake up in the middle of the night, her hand instinctively reaching for the empty space in the bed beside her, and the reality of her aloneness would hit her with the force of a physical blow. The brownstone, which she had once envisioned as a warm and welcoming family home, felt cavernous and cold, its silence amplifying her loneliness. Her friends Chloe and another close friend, Jessica, a sharp-witted lawyer, who had handled her divorce with a ferocious tenacity, formed a protective cocoon around her. They would show up at her doorstep armed with tubs of Ben and Jerry's trashy magazines and a bottomless well of righteous indignation on her behalf. They would listen to her weep, they would rail against Ethan's cruelty, and they would gently but firmly nudge her towards the future. "You can't let him win. Win, Liv," Jessica had said one evening, her voice firm as she watched Olivia listlessly poke at a salad. "And right now, by letting yourself waste away like this, you're letting him win. You need to show him, and more importantly, you need to show yourself that your life didn't end when he walked out that door." Jessica's words, though harsh, were a necessary jolt. Olivia knew she was right. She couldn't let her grief consume her, not when she had a new life growing inside her, a life that deserved a happy, healthy mother. That night, she made a decision. She would not be a victim. She would be a survivor. The next morning, she woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She started with the nursery. She unpacked the boxes, assembled the crib, and painted the walls a soft sunshine yellow. She hung a mobile of delicate hand-carved wooden animals above the crib, and as she watched them twirl in the gentle morning breeze, a flicker of hope ignited within her. This room was not a monument to her loss. It was a promise of a new beginning. She threw herself into her work, channeling her pain and anger into creativity. As a landscape architect, she had always found solace in the natural world, in the patient, resilient beauty of plants and trees. She took on a new project, a commission, to design a rooftop garden for a new luxury hotel in downtown Manhattan. The project was ambitious and demanding, and it was exactly what she needed. She spent her days poring over blueprints, sketching designs, and sourcing rare and exotic plants. The work was a balm to her wounded soul, a tangible way to create beauty in a world that had suddenly turned ugly. It was during a visit to a specialist nursery in upstate New York that her life took an unexpected turn. She was searching for a particular variety of Japanese maple, a rare weeping cultivar with delicate lace-like leaves. The owner of the nursery, a gruff but knowledgeable man named Mr. Henderson, told her that he had sold his last one to a private collector. "A real plant enthusiast, this fella?" Mr. Henderson had said, his voice a gravelly rumble. "Buys up all my best stock. Lives up on a massive estate on the Hudson. A real recluse, they say. Name's Sebastian Croft." The name meant nothing to Olivia. She was disappointed, but she thanked Mr. Henderson and was about to leave when a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the nursery. A tall, impeccably dressed man with silvering hair and piercing blue eyes stepped out of the car. He exuded an aura of quiet authority, a man who was used to being in command of his surroundings. Mr. Henderson's face lit up. "Well, speak of the devil," he muttered to Olivia. "That's him. That's Mr. Croft." Sebastian Croft overheard him, and a faint, amused smile touched his lips. He approached them, his gaze falling on Olivia. There was an intensity in his eyes that made her feel both seen and slightly flustered. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," he said, his voice a low, cultured baritone that sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Not at all, Mr. Croft," Mr. Henderson said jovially. "This young lady was just inquiring about your Japanese maple." Sebastian Croft's gaze shifted back to Olivia, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. "My Japanese maple," Olivia found her voice. "Yes," she said, her tone more confident than she felt. "The Acer palmatum. Ryusen, I was hoping to use it in a project I'm designing." Sebastian Croft's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You're a landscape architect?" "Yes," she said. "Olivia Parker." He extended a hand. "Sebastian Croft. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Parker." His handshake was firm and warm, and he held her gaze for a moment longer than was strictly necessary. They talked for over an hour, their conversation flowing as easily as the nearby stream. He was fascinated by her work, and she was captivated by his deep knowledge of botany and his passion for conservation. He told her about his estate on the Hudson, a vast property that he was slowly rewilding, returning it to its natural state. He spoke with a quiet passion that was a world away from Ethan's loud, boastful pronouncements. As they were about to part ways, he said, "I know this is forward, but I would be fascinated to see your designs for the hotel rooftop. And perhaps you might be interested in seeing my Japanese maple." Olivia was taken aback, but she found herself smiling. "I'd like that very much, Mr. Croft." "Sebastian," he corrected her gently. Their first date, as Chloe would later excitedly call it, was a visit to his estate the following weekend. It was a world away from the glitz and glamour of Manhattan. A long, winding driveway led through a dense forest of ancient trees to a magnificent stone-built manor house that overlooked the Hudson River. The grounds were a breathtaking tapestry of rolling hills, wildflower meadows, and meticulously tended gardens. Sebastian gave her a tour of the property, his love for the land evident in every word he spoke. He showed her his prized Japanese maple, its delicate crimson leaves a splash of vibrant color against the lush green of the surrounding forest. He showed her his greenhouses filled with rare and exotic orchids. He showed her the apiary where he kept bees and the organic vegetable garden that supplied his kitchen. They had lunch on a sun-drenched terrace overlooking the river, a simple, delicious meal of fresh-baked bread, artisanal cheeses, and salads made with vegetables from his garden. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. She found herself opening up to him in a way she hadn't with anyone in a long time. She told him about her pregnancy, her recent divorce, and her struggle to rebuild her life. She didn't mean to the words, just tumbled out of her a torrent of pent-up pain and vulnerability. He listened patiently, his blue eyes filled with a compassion that was so genuine it brought tears to her eyes. He didn't offer platitudes or easy answers. He simply listened, and in his quiet, attentive presence she felt a sense of peace that had been absent from her life for so long. When she told him about Ethan, about his cruelty, and his constant need for validation, a flicker of something cold and hard entered his eyes. "He sounds like a very small man," he said, his voice low and firm. Olivia was startled by the fierce protectiveness in his tone. For the first time since Ethan had left, she felt a sense of safety, a feeling of being cherished. As the afternoon drew to a close, he walked her back to her car. "I hope this isn't the last time I see you, Olivia," he said, his voice soft. "It won't be," she said, and she knew in her heart that it was true. Their relationship blossomed in the weeks that followed. They would meet for long walks in Central Park, for quiet dinners at out-of-the-way restaurants where they were unlikely to be seen, and for weekends at his estate on the Hudson. He was a perfect gentleman, attentive and kind, and he treated her with a reverence that was both thrilling and slightly terrifying. She learned more about him. He was a tech billionaire, the founder of a revolutionary software company that had changed the way the world communicated. He was notoriously private, a man who shunned the spotlight and valued his anonymity. He had been a widower for 10 years, his wife having died in a tragic accident. He had never remarried, and he had poured all his energy into his work and his philanthropic endeavors. He was everything Ethan was not: kind, humble, and genuinely interested in the world around him. He was a man of substance, a man of quiet strength, and he was, to Olivia's utter astonishment, falling in love with her. He never pressured her, never pushed for more than she was ready to give. He was patient and understanding, and he seemed to know instinctively what she needed. He would show up at her brownstone with her favorite takeout, or he would send her a bouquet of her favorite flowers, peonies, with a simple handwritten note that said, "Thinking of you." One evening, as they were sitting in front of the fireplace in her living room, he took her hand. Olivia, he said, his voice soft but firm. I know this is fast, and I know you've been through a lot, but I have to tell you how I feel. I'm falling in love with you. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. I'm falling in love with you too, Sebastian, she whispered. He leaned in and kissed her a gentle, tender kiss that was filled with all the unspoken emotions that had been building between them. It was a kiss that promised a future she had never dared to dream of, a future filled with love and laughter and the quiet joy of a shared life. As her due date approached, Sebastian became her rock. He went with her to her prenatal appointments, he helped her finish the nursery, and he was there holding her hand when she gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy. She named him Leo, a name that meant lion, a symbol of the strength she had found within herself. Ethan, meanwhile, was completely oblivious to the dramatic changes in Olivia's life. He was too wrapped up in his own world, too busy flaunting his movie star girlfriend and his perfect life. He had heard through the grapevine that Olivia had given birth, and he had sent her a perfunctory text message, "Congrats. Let me know what I owe you for child support." He had no idea that Olivia was no longer the broken, lonely woman he had left behind. He had no idea that she had found a love that was deeper and more profound than anything he could ever comprehend. And he had no idea that she was about to make a spectacular entrance back into the world on the arm of a man who could buy and sell him 1,000 times over. The stage was set for a showdown, and the red carpet was about to become a battleground. Ethan Thorne was about to learn a very public and very painful lesson in humility. While Olivia was cocooned in the quiet, authentic joy of new motherhood and burgeoning love, Ethan Thorne was aggressively marketing his own happiness. His life was no longer something to be lived, but a brand to be managed, and he was its most tireless, obnoxious promoter. His Instagram was the primary vehicle for this campaign, a relentless, high-gloss stream of manufactured bliss. Each post was a carefully composed tableau designed to scream success and effortless cool. Ethan and Isabella clinking champagne flutes on a private jet to St. Bart's. The caption, a casual #work hard play, hard. The two of them in matching Fendi ski suits in a Courchevel chalet looking artfully windswept. Isabella posing with a newly acquired, eye-wateringly expensive Hermes Birkin bag on the Pont des Arts in Paris, a lovelock with their initials visible just over her shoulder. The zenith of this public relations offensive was a sprawling 8-page feature in Prestige Living, a glossy magazine whose primary function was to flatter the egos of the newly rich. The article, brazenly titled, "The Art of the Upgrade," Ethan Thorne on life, love and living authentically, was a masterclass in narcissistic revisionist history. In it, Ethan photographed in his stark Soho penthouse, pontificated on his personal philosophy, a toxic brew of plagiarized self-help quotes and breathtaking hypocrisy. Authenticity is everything. He was quoted as saying, his face airbrushed to an uncanny smoothness beaming from the page. It means having the courage to audit your life, to identify the elements that are no longer serving your highest self, and having the strength to cut them away. It can be painful, of course. People might not understand. But you can't build a future on a foundation of compromise. The thinly veiled cruelty was staggering. He referred to his 5-year marriage not by name, but as his previous chapter, a time of comfortable stagnation and muted colors. He spoke of his new life with Isabella as an explosion of vibrancy, a return to passion. The accompanying photos were a grotesque parody of intimacy. There was Isabella, draped in a sheer silk robe, perched on the edge of their vast, uncreased bed, hand-feeding him a single perfect strawberry. There was Ethan staring thoughtfully out his floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of Macallan 25 in hand, as if contemplating the secrets of the universe rather than his stock portfolio. It was less a portrait of a relationship and more an advertisement for a life no one was actually living. The article landed like a grenade in their former social circle. Olivia's best friend Chloe was the one who broke the news, calling Olivia in a state of incandescent rage. "You will not believe this sanctimonious pig!" she shrieked down the phone, proceeding to read the most offensive passages aloud. Olivia, who was rocking a fussy milk-drunk Leo in her arms, listened in silence. The familiar acidic sting of betrayal pricked at her, but to her own surprise it was a distant sensation, a phantom limb of a pain that had mostly healed. When Chloe emailed her the link, she opened it on her laptop. She looked at the glossy, sterile images of the man she had once loved and the girl who had replaced her. They looked like two beautiful, expensive mannequins, their smiles vacant, their poses rigid. There was no life in their eyes. She looked down at the warm, snoring baby, nestled against her chest, at his tiny fist clutching her finger, and a wave of profound peace washed over her. She pressed a soft kiss to his downy head, inhaling his sweet, milky scent. This was real. This was authentic. This warm, messy, unpredictable, and deeply joyful reality was something Ethan, in his cold, curated world, would never understand. She closed the laptop, not with anger, but with a sudden, overwhelming wave of pity. He wasn't living a life. He was propping up a facade, and that had to be an exhausting, empty existence. When Sebastian visited that evening, he found the magazine open on the coffee table. He read the article in silence, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Olivia watched him, and when he was done, he placed it down gently and looked at her, his piercing blue eyes full of a quiet, protective fire. "He's terrified," Sebastian said, his voice a low, steady rumble. "Men like that, men who need to shout their happiness from the rooftops, are the ones who have the least of it. It's a performance to convince himself, not the world. He's a very small man, Olivia, making a very loud noise to distract from his own emptiness." His words were a balm extinguishing the last embers of her hurt. He didn't just comfort her, he armed her with clarity, a new lens through which to see the man who had broken her heart. Ethan wasn't a titan to be feared, but a hollow shell to be pitied. In the months that followed, Olivia's world continued to expand as Ethan's, unbeknownst to him, began to shrink. Her rooftop garden project for the new Nomad Hotel was completed to rapturous reviews. It was a masterpiece of sustainable design, a lush urban oasis that felt both wild and serene. Her work earned her the prestigious National Landscape Design Award, a huge honor in her field. At the awards ceremony, she walked onto the stage, her pregnant form elegant in a simple, well-cut dress, and gave a brief, humble speech, thanking her team and speaking about her belief that creating green spaces in cities was an act of radical hope. The award led to a feature of her own, not in a vapid lifestyle circular, but in Architectural Digest. The photo shoot was the antithesis of Ethan's. The photographer shot in natural light, capturing Olivia, in her element, in the sun-drenched living room of her brownstone, her hands smudged with charcoal from sketching, or on the finished hotel rooftop. Her face lit with a genuine smile as she inspected a flowering vine. The article celebrated her talent, her vision, and her quiet, profound contribution to the beauty of the world. It was a dignified, powerful testament to her resilience and her craft. Her life with Sebastian deepened into the kind of partnership she had always craved. He seamlessly became a part of her and Leo's world. He was a man of immense wealth and influence, yet he found his greatest joy in the simplest things. He would lie on the floor of the brownstone for hours, his deep laughter echoing as he made silly faces at Leo. He learned to distinguish Leo's tired cry from his hungry one. He was there for the first real gummy smile, the first coup, the first time Leo rolled over. A moment they celebrated with the same hushed reverence as a major business deal. They were a family forged not by obligation, but by a deep, abiding, and quiet love. Ethan, meanwhile, was discovering that a life built on novelty has a very short shelf life. The dazzling thrill of Isabella was fading, revealing a chasm of incompatibility. Her conversations, which he had once found refreshingly simple, now seemed achingly dull. A looping track of celebrity gossip, brand names, and complaints about her Instagram algorithm. Her entire existence was performative, lived through the lens of her phone. He would try to talk to her about a new business venture or an article he'd read, and her eyes would glaze over before she'd interrupt to ask if he thought a particular filter made her look snatched. He was living with a beautiful, animated ghost. A strange, gnawing curiosity began to consume him. He started thinking about Olivia constantly. He found her new private Instagram account. A friend of a friend had let it slip. He created a fake profile to follow her. What he saw was a quiet gut punch. Her feed wasn't a performance. It was a diary. It was filled with candid, sun-drenched photos, Leo's feet impossibly tiny, Olivia laughing with dirt on her cheek from her garden, a close-up of plans for a new project. It was a life of substance, a life that felt real. He saw the photo from her awards night holding the heavy, elegant trophy, looking radiant and utterly self-possessed. Then he saw the one that stopped his breath. It was a candid shot, likely taken by a friend. Olivia and a man were sitting on a park bench, sharing a coffee. The man had his arm around her, and he was looking at her with an expression of such pure, unadulterated adoration that Ethan felt a hot, possessive surge of anger. Who the hell was this guy? His fingers flew across the keyboard. He searched her name, the awards, the hotel project. And then he found him. The man in the photo wasn't just some new boyfriend. He was Sebastian Croft. A quick, frantic search brought up a handful of old, rare articles from Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. Tech visionary, philanthropist, recluse, and a net worth with so many commas, it made Ethan's own considerable wealth look like a rounding error. The blood drained from Ethan's face. He felt a cold, sick dread pool in his stomach. He had left Olivia for an aspiring actress. He'd dressed up as a movie star, and she had quietly, without any fanfare, ended up with a man who could buy the entire movie studio, its back catalogue, and the island where they filmed. The sheer cosmic scale of his miscalculation was staggering. He saw himself not as the man who had upgraded, but as the fool who had traded a winning lottery ticket for a handful of magic beans. The final act was set in motion a few weeks later. The Met Gala, the absolute pinnacle of the social calendar, was approaching. "I'm one of the co-chairs this year," Sebastian mentioned casually one evening as they were cleaning up after dinner, Leo asleep in his bassinet nearby. "And I was hoping my partner would do me the honor of attending with me." Olivia froze, a dish towel in her hand. The thought was terrifying. The cameras, the crowds, the judgment, it was everything she had spent the last year escaping. "Oh, Seb, I don't think I can," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "That world, it's not me. I've been so happy being invisible." Sebastian came to her, taking the towel from her hands and enveloping them in his. He looked her directly in the eyes, his gaze steady and reassuring. "I know, and I wouldn't ask if it were just about a party," he said softly. "Think of it differently. This isn't about stepping back into his world. It's about you stepping into your own on your own terms. I want the world to see the woman I see every day. Not the wronged wife from the tabloids, but the brilliant, strong, beautiful artist who is creating the most incredible life. This isn't a performance, Olivia. It's a coronation. Your coronation." She looked at him, at the absolute belief in his eyes, and felt her fear begin to recede, replaced by a nascent flicker of excitement. He wasn't asking her to be an accessory. He was asking her to take her crown. "Okay." She breathed, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Okay, I'll go." The next day, she made a call to a stylist Sebastian had recommended, a legend known for creating iconic, elegant looks. As she described her vision, something graceful, powerful, and unapologetically her, she felt a sense of purpose solidifying within her. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan Thorne was pulling every string he could, calling in every favor he was owed to secure his own tickets to the gala. He finally got them, and he and Isabella immediately began planning their assault on the red carpet, plotting a coordinated look designed to get them noticed. He had no idea he was a bit player in a drama he didn't even know was being written. He was preparing for a party, while Olivia was preparing for a resurrection. The night of the Met Gala was less a party and more a controlled detonation of fame and fashion. It was a sensory assault, a glittering maelstrom on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The air itself seemed to vibrate thick with the percussive roar of hundreds of photographers, shouting the frenzied clicking of a million shutters, and the electric hum of the crowd pressed against the barricades, their cell phones held aloft like a sea of digital offerings. This year's theme, Celestial Bodies, had inspired a parade of ethereal and often outlandish creations, turning the grand staircase into a river of silk satin and starlight. It was a night for legends, not for amateurs. Into this crucible of judgment, Ethan and Isabella arrived. Their entrance was precisely as subtle as a car alarm. The rented vintage Rolls-Royce, a monstrous confection of cream and chrome, was so ostentatiously large, it had trouble navigating the turn onto the carpet, causing a momentary, embarrassing gridlock. Inside, Ethan had spent the final moments giving Isabella a frantic, whispered pep talk. Remember, chin up, look bored, indifferent, like you belong here. Don't smile too much. It looks desperate. And for God's sake, let me do the talking if anyone from Vogue approaches. Isabella, who was busy applying a final sticky layer of lip gloss in her phone's camera, simply nodded the advice washing over her, like a gentle, unheeded wave. Don't worry, baby, she'd purred. I know how to work a camera. Ethan stepped out first, a peacock in a ludicrously ill-advised tuxedo of crushed navy velvet, with a satin lapel so wide it looked like a pair of wings. His bow tie, a matching velvet monstrosity, threatened to eclipse his chin. He plastered a smirk on his face, a pathetic imitation of the confident swagger he'd seen in movies, and struck a pose. Isabella emerged after him, a human disco ball poured into a skin-tight silver-sequined gown with a neckline that plunged to her navel and a slit that climbed dangerously high up her thigh. The dress was designed not to be admired, but to be noticed, a desperate scream for attention, in a room full of confident whispers. They were an assault on the senses, a garish splash of new money and boundless ego. They posed together, their movements stiff, choreographed, and utterly devoid of warmth. Ethan's hand on Isabella's back looked less like an affectionate caress, and more like he was maneuvering a piece of furniture into place. Isabella cycled through her three signature poses: the pout, the over-the-shoulder smolder, and the hand-on-hip pout. The veteran photographers on the line, men and women who could spot an imposter from 100 paces, took their obligatory shots with an air of weary disdain before turning their lenses away, searching for a more authentic moment, a real star. Ethan, however, was encased in a fortress of self-delusion. In his mind, the flashes were a confirmation of his status. The shouts were for him. He was the man who had it all: the movie star girlfriend, the bespoke life, a ticket to the most exclusive party on the planet. He felt a surge of triumphant glee. He scanned the crowd, his eyes hungry for recognitions, for the envious glances he was sure he was receiving. He was here. He had arrived. He had no idea he was merely the opening act for his own execution. Then a palpable shift occurred on the carpet. A quiet authority replaced the chaotic energy. The frantic shouting of the press died down, replaced by an expectant murmur. A sleek black Bentley Mulsanne, the automotive equivalent of a perfectly tailored tuxedo, pulled silently to a stop. Its presence was a statement of such profound and understated wealth that the gaudy Rolls-Royce parked ahead of it suddenly looked like a cheap toy. The chauffeur opened the door and Sebastian Croft emerged. He didn't need crushed velvet or an oversized bow tie. In a classic, exquisitely cut, Tom Ford tuxedo, he radiated a power that was both innate and absolute. He moved with an unhurried grace, a man completely at ease in his own skin and in any environment he chose to occupy. He turned, ignoring the now frantic press, and extended a hand into the car's dark interior. And then Olivia stepped out. It was not an entrance. It was an unveiling. The world seemed to hold its breath. A collective gasp rippled through the press line, a sound of pure, unadulterated awe. Olivia Parker, a woman the world had forgotten, had just become the undisputed center of the universe. She was a vision from a dream, a celestial Madonna brought to life. Her gown, a custom creation by a revered Parisian couturier, was a masterpiece of midnight blue silk chiffon that seemed to have captured the night sky itself. The fabric flowed around her, cascading in soft, ethereal layers that draped her 7-month pregnant form, not to hide it, but to celebrate it, to frame it as the miracle it was. The neckline was a graceful, off-the-shoulder sweep, and from her neck a single magnificent diamond necklace, a gift from Sebastian, rested against her collarbone, glittering like a captured constellation. Her honey-blonde hair was swept back into a low, intricate chignon, revealing the elegant line of her neck. Her face, free of the heavy makeup favored by women like Isabella, was luminous. She glowed with an inner radiance, a serene, confident joy that no cosmetic could ever replicate. She was not playing a role. She was simply magnificently herself. Sebastian's hand rested gently on the small of her back, his touch both protective and proud. He looked at her not as an accessory, but as his queen. They were a tableau of genuine love, of quiet strength, of a power so profound it didn't need to announce itself. The photographers, who had been lethargic just moments before, erupted. The sound was a deafening, continuous roar of shutters, a desperate, frenzied volley to capture an image that was already iconic. They weren't just taking a picture. They were witnessing a moment. Olivia, Olivia, look this way, Mrs. Parker, over here, beautiful. The shouts were no longer dismissive. They were reverent. Ethan stood frozen 20 feet away, the smug grin melting from his face like wax. His mind struggled to process the vision before him. It was as if he was looking at a stranger. This radiant, celestial being couldn't be his Olivia, the quiet, sensible woman he had deemed burnt and uninspired. The woman he had cast aside was now the single most breathtaking creature he had ever seen. His gaze flickered from Olivia's serene magnificence to Isabella, who was now adjusting her dress, looking annoyed that the attention had shifted. In the brilliant glare of Olivia's authentic light, Isabella's sequins suddenly looked cheap. Her practiced pout seemed vulgar. Her overtly sexual dress looked desperate. He had bragged to his friends that he had traded in a sedan for a sports car. Now he saw the devastating truth. He had traded a priceless work of art for a cheap, factory-made replica. The realization was a physical blow. A wave of vertigo washed over him, and the triumphant sounds of the gala faded into a dull roar in his ears. Every cruel word he had ever said to her came rushing back, each one a fresh stab of shame. He had called her life stagnation. He had called himself a pioneer of authenticity. The hypocrisy was so vast, so profound, it threatened to swallow him whole. He and Isabella were now completely invisible, two ghosts haunting the edge of the frame. The entire world was focused on Olivia and Sebastian as they began to ascend the grand staircase. As they passed the spot where Ethan stood, paralyzed, Olivia's gaze for a single shattering second met his. He braced himself for a look of triumph, of anger, of smug satisfaction. He would have welcomed it, but it never came. Instead, her eyes held only a quiet, profound pity. It was a look that didn't say, "I told you so." It said, "I'm so sorry for you." It was the look one gives to something broken, something small and sad. And in that single, devastating glance, she stripped him of his anger, his pride, and the last vestiges of his dignity. He was not her villain. He wasn't even a footnote. He was simply an object of her compassion. That was the deepest cut of all. The rest of the evening was a masterclass in public humiliation. Inside the museum, while Olivia and Sebastian were personally greeted by Anna Wintour and escorted to the co-chair's table at the very heart of the gala, Ethan and Isabella were directed by a clipboard-wielding assistant to a table in the far-flung hinterlands of the room. It was a social Siberia, populated by reality T-stars, TikTok influencers, and the forgotten plus ones of more important people. The air at their table was thick with the desperate energy of people who knew they didn't quite belong. From his miserable vantage point, Ethan was forced to watch the main event. He saw Olivia, seated next to a legendary film director, engaged in an animated conversation, her laughter echoing softly. He saw Sebastian in a deep discussion with a tech visionary who had changed the world. They were not just attending the party, they were the party. The final nail in the coffin of his ego came during the evening's speeches. Sebastian took the stage, and the vast room fell silent. He spoke eloquently about the museum, about the power of art. Then his voice softened, and he turned his gaze directly to Olivia. Art, in its highest form, allows us to see the world anew, he said, his voice resonating with deep emotion. And tonight, I am here with the greatest artist I have ever known. My partner, Olivia Parker, who has taught me the true meaning of resilience, grace, and the transformative power of a loving heart. She has taken the broken pieces of a life and is building a masterpiece of strength and beauty. And she is creating our family's own masterpiece right now. He gestured gently towards her, a look of overwhelming love on his face. Thank you for inspiring me and the world every single day. The room erupted in a wave of heartfelt applause. Olivia's eyes shone with tears as she looked back at him. Her expression, a perfect portrait of love, returned. Ethan felt the applause like a series of physical blows. He had had that love. He had held that masterpiece in his hands, and in his blind, arrogant stupidity, he had thrown it into the fire. He risked a glance at Isabella. She had missed the entire speech. She was hunched over her phone, her face illuminated by its pale light, furiously editing a selfie she had taken of her dessert plate, her thumb swiping through filters, utterly absorbed in her own tiny digital world. He looked from her vacant expression to the radiant, beloved woman across the room. He had bragged to everyone that his mistress looked like a movie star, but his pregnant ex-wife had just become royalty, and he, Ethan Thorne, the self-proclaimed king of the upgrade, was nothing more than a court jester in the ruins of his own pathetic kingdom. And there you have it, a story of love loss and the ultimate, most satisfying revenge. Olivia's journey from a heartbroken, discarded wife to a radiant, empowered woman on the arm of a man who truly valued her is a powerful reminder that our stories are not defined by those who leave us, but by the strength we find within ourselves to rewrite our own endings. Ethan, in his blind arrogance, thought he could simply trade up, but he learned the hard way that true value isn't found in flashy appearances, but in the quiet, unshakable strength of a person's character. What did you think of Olivia's incredible transformation? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more tales of epic comebacks and karmic justice, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas that will leave you cheering. Your support helps us to continue bringing you the stories you love. Thanks for watching.
What's worse than losing your dream home in a bitter divorce? How about having your arrogant ex-husband, the man who took it all, mock you for the simple life you now lead? For Celine Vesper, this was her new, painful reality. Every day, her ex Mitchell lived in the palace they built together, while she was left with memories and his scorn. But what Mitchell didn't know, as he stood on the marble steps of his castle, throwing shade at his ex-wife, was that the ink was already drying on a contract that would turn his world upside down. He thought he was looking at his past. He had no idea he was talking to the new lady of the house. The late afternoon sun of a California autumn cast long, skeletal shadows across the manicured lawns of Sycamore Lane. It was a light that made everything look expensive, from the imported Italian cypress trees to the slate roofs of the Bel Air mansions. For Celine Vesper, it was a light that illuminated ghosts. She told herself it was a bad idea. Her therapist, Dr. Albright, had used phrases like re-traumatization and unproductive fixation. But her car, a modest but reliable Lexus that felt like a dinghy in this ocean of Rolls-Royces and Bentleys, seemed to have a mind of its own. It had guided her here to the one place on earth that was both her heaven and her hell of 17, Sycamore Lane. The house stood as a monument to a life that was no longer hers, a sprawling three-story contemporary Spanish villa with white stucco walls, a terracotta tile roof, and dramatic black-framed windows. She had chosen every detail, from the century-old olive trees craned into the courtyard to the specific shade of limestone for the entryway. She had sketched the layout on napkins at a cafe in Santa Monica, dreaming of the family they would raise within its walls. Now it was just his. A sleek obsidian black Aston Martin DB11 was parked in the driveway, angled with a deliberate, almost obnoxious precision. Mitchell's new toy. He'd always been a man who wore his success like a suit of armor. The divorce had been a brutal war of attrition, and in his eyes, he had been the undisputed victor. He kept the house the majority of their shared assets and his pride. She had left with a settlement that seemed generous to outsiders, but felt like severance pay for a decade of her life and a heart ground to dust. As she sat there, engine idling, a wave of nausea and nostalgia washed over her. She could almost hear the echo of their laughter by the pool, the scent of the night-blooming jasmine she'd planted by the veranda. It was a masochistic pilgrimage, she knew, but some wounds you can't help but touch just to see if they still hurt. They did. Just as she was about to put the car in drive and flee, the massive oak front door swung open. And there he was, Mitchell Sterling. He was dressed in tailored golf attire, his blonde hair perfectly coiffed, his face tanned and smug. He looked every bit the master of his universe, and he wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm was a woman who couldn't have been a day over 24. Olivia. Selena had seen pictures of her on Mitchell's ostentatious Instagram feed. She was all long limbs, blindingly white teeth, and the kind of vacant beauty that required very little thought. Mitchell's eyes scanned the street and landed on Celine's car. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. He'd recognized it. Of course he did. He'd probably memorized the make and model as another piece of evidence for the pathetic, downgraded life she was now living. Instead of letting her slip away, he raised a hand in an exaggerated wave and began walking towards the street, dragging Olivia along with him. Panic seized Celine. Drive, just drive away. But her hands were frozen on the wheel. It would look like she was running. It would look like he still had power over her. With a deep breath that did little to calm her hammering heart, she put the car in park and lowered the window, schooling her face into a mask of polite indifference. "Well, well, look what the cat dragged in," Mitchell began, his voice dripping with faux bonhomie. He leaned against her passenger door, a proprietary gesture that made her skin crawl. "Celine, taking a trip down memory lane? Or just lost on your way back to your, what is it, that little shoebox in Studio City?" Olivia giggled, a sound like tiny, sharp bells. Celine's jaw tightened. "Hello, Mitchell. I was just in the neighborhood." "The neighborhood?" he scoffed, gesturing expansively at the grand estates around them. Honey, this isn't a neighborhood. This is the neighborhood. Big difference, you probably forgot. He patted the roof of her Lexus. Cute car. Sensible. Is this what they give you when you trade in your soul for good gas mileage? It gets me where I need to go, she said, her voice dangerously level. I'm sure it does, he said, his eyes glinting. Olivia and I were just heading to the club. We're thinking of redoing the entire pool area. Olivia thinks the Moroccan tile is a little dated. It's like so 2022, Olivia added, examining her flawless nails. Selena felt a hot flash of anger. She had spent 6 months sourcing that tile from a small artisan family in Fez. Every intricate pattern had a story. To Olivia, it was just dated. We're putting in a full outdoor kitchen, a fire pit lounge, and one of those infinity edges that makes it look like the water is spilling right into the canyon, Mitchell continued, his chest puffed out. The budget is basically unlimited. When you do a deal like the one I just closed with Blackstone, you don't really look at the price tags anymore. He was performing, she realized, not just for her, but for Olivia, for the invisible audience of his own ego. He needed to constantly reinforce the narrative that leaving her was the best decision he'd ever made. That's nice for you, Mitchell, Celine said, her patience fraying. I really should be going. So soon. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was meant to be heard. Listen, if things are tight, really, you just have to say the word. I don't know, throw a little something your way. For old time's sake. Wouldn't want you to have to sell this sensible little car. That was it. The condescension, the feigned pity, the sheer audacity of him offering her charity in front of the palace he'd stolen from her. It was a carefully crafted humiliation, and for a second, it worked. She felt small. She felt poor. She felt like the woman he had tried to convince her she was, for the last 2 years of their marriage, incompetent, dependent, and lost without him. But then something else flickered to life inside her, a tiny cold ember of resolve. She looked past his smug face at the house, her house. She looked at the new girl who saw it only as a backdrop for selfies. And she looked at Mitchell's, a man so insecure he had to tear her down to feel tall. A strange calm settled over her. She offered him a small, enigmatic smile. That's very generous of you, Mitchell. But I'm fine. Really, she said, her voice clear and steady, you should get back to your renovations. It sounds like a big project. She turned the key in the ignition. The engine purred to life. Mitchell was momentarily thrown off by her lack of a reaction. He'd expected tears, or anger, or a desperate plea. This calm composure was unsettling. All right, he said, stepping back from the car. Well, don't be a stranger. Actually, no, do be a stranger. It's better for everyone. He laughed, and Olivia joined in. As Celine pulled away from the curb, she glanced in the rearview mirror. Mitchell was standing there, his arm draped possessively around Olivia, watching her drive away. The king on his throne, surveying the peasant leaving his kingdom. Her hands were shaking, but not from sadness or fear anymore. It was rage, a cold, focused rage. She drove for 2 blocks, her vision blurred, with unshed tears of fury. Then she pulled over, took out her phone, and dialed a number she knew by heart. The phone was answered on the second ring. A deep, calm voice filled the line. Celine, is everything all right? She took a shaky breath. Jasper, she said, her voice cracking slightly. I did something stupid. And now, I want to do something crazy. Jasper Devereaux's office was on the 80th floor of the tallest skyscraper in downtown Los Angeles. It wasn't an office so much as a command center, a glass-walled sanctuary that floated above the city's smog. From this vantage point, the Hollywood Hills looked like a crumpled green blanket, and the sprawling metropolis was a silent, intricate circuit board. Jasper didn't just have a view of the city, he owned a significant portion of it. He was a man who moved in a different stratosphere from Mitchell Sterling. Where Mitchell was new, money-loud, and desperate for validation, Jasper was old world with a fortune so vast and diversified it was almost abstract. His name wasn't splashed across tabloids. It was whispered in boardrooms and government halls. He was the invisible hand, the kingmaker. At 45, he had the sharp intelligence of a chess grandmaster and a stillness that unnerved those who mistook it for passivity. He listened without interruption, as Celine recounted the entire humiliating encounter. He heard the tremor in her voice, the righteous anger she was trying to suppress. He didn't just hear the words, he understood the subtext. He knew this wasn't just about an arrogant ex-husband, it was about the desecration of a dream. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. He wasn't calculating a response. He was allowing her the space to breathe. "He offered you money," Jasper said, his voice a low rumble. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, and it was laced with a quiet, dangerous contempt. Like I was some charity case he could throw a few bucks at to ease his conscience. Celine replied, the bitterness sharp in her tone. And the way he looked at me, Jasper, the way he talked about the house, our house, like I was a ghost haunting his new, perfect life. "You are not a ghost, Celine," Jasper said softly, but with an iron certainty. "You are the architect. He is merely the squatter." He swiveled in his leather chair to face the window, looking down at the city below. Mitchell Sterling had made a critical error. He had not only hurt Celine, but he had underestimated her. And in doing so, he had stepped into a world he couldn't possibly comprehend. "You said you wanted to do something crazy," Jasper said, a hint of a smile in his voice. "Define crazy." "I don't know." She admitted, her frustration palpable. "I want him to feel what I felt. I want him to understand that he didn't win, that he lost something irreplaceable. I want to wipe that smug look off his face so completely that he can't even remember how to smile." Jasper's mind was already working, connecting dots, moving pieces on an invisible board. Revenge could be clumsy and brutish, or it could be an art form. He preferred the latter. It wasn't about simple destruction. It was about poetic justice. "Mitchell is a man defined by his possessions," Jasper mused, more to himself than to her. "His status is tied to tangible assets. The car, the watch, the new girlfriend. And at the center of it all is the house. It's his crown jewel, his symbol of victory over you." "And I can't stand it," she whispered. "Then we shall take it from him," Jasper said, as calmly as if he were ordering lunch. Selena was silent. "What? You mean legally fight him for it, Jasper? The divorce is final. It's his, the court decided." "The courts are irrelevant," Jasper said dismissively. "I'm not talking about fighting him. I'm talking about buying it." A stunned laugh escaped Celine's lips. "He would never sell it. Not in a million years. And he would certainly never ever sell it to me." "Of course not," Jasper agreed. "He won't be selling it to you. He won't even know who the buyer is until it's far too late. He'll be selling it to a holding company. An anonymous, incredibly motivated buyer who is prepared to make him an offer that his greed cannot possibly resist." He spun his chair back around and pressed a button on his intercom. "Isabel, please come in." A moment later, a woman in a razor-sharp suit with an air of lethal competence entered the office. This was Isabelle Laurent, Jasper's head of real estate and acquisitions. She was a legend in the industry, known for her discretion and her ability to close impossible deals. "Isabel, I have a new priority acquisition," Jasper said, his tone leaving no room for discussion. 1217 Sycamore Lane, Bel Air. The current owner is a Mr. Mitchell Sterling. Isabel's eyebrow arched slightly. She knew the address. It was a prime piece of property. "Is it on the Mitchellet?" "It is now," Jasper said. "I want you to create a new LLC, something untraceable. Argentum Holdings, perhaps? You will approach Mr. Sterling's agent with an all-cash offer that is 30% above the current estimated Mitchellet value." Isabel's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. 30% was an insane premium. It was an offer designed not to be negotiated, but to be instantly accepted. "He will be suspicious," Isabel noted. "He will be arrogant," Jasper corrected. "He will see it as confirmation of his own genius. He'll believe he owns a property so desirable that the mysterious forces of international capital are clamoring for it. His ego will blind him to the truth. I want a 30-day escrow, no contingencies. We will move with blinding speed. Can you do it?" "Consider it done, Mr. Devereaux," Isabel said, with a curt nod. She turned to leave. "One more thing," Isabel, Jasper added. "Mr. Sterling is planning renovations. Ensure the offer is submitted before he has a chance to sign any contracts with builders. We want him to see this as a lucky escape from a massive financial undertaking." Isabel nodded again and swept out of the room, her mind already composing the offer. Jasper turned his attention back to the phone. "Celine, are you still there?" She was her mind reeling. "Jasper, 30% over Mitchellet. That's millions." "It's a rounding error," he said gently. "Don't think about the money. Think about the look on his face. Think about what the house represents. It's not a property, Celine. It's a closing statement. He wrote his chapter, and now we are going to write the epilogue." A slow smile, the first genuine smile she'd had all day, spread across Celine's face. The feeling of powerlessness that had plagued her for years began to recede, replaced by a thrilling, terrifying sense of anticipation. It was crazy, it was audacious, it was perfect. "What do I have to do?" she asked. "Nothing," Jasper replied. "Absolutely nothing. Let his greed and his ego do all the work. For the next few weeks, you just live your life. And perhaps start thinking about how you'd like to redecorate." Mitchell Sterling received the email from his real estate agent, a slick, perpetually tanned man named Chad, on a Tuesday morning. He was on the veranda, sipping an espresso and scrolling through luxury watch websites while Olivia practiced yoga poses by the pool. The subject line was simple: astounding unsolicited offer for 1217 Sycamore. He opened it with a smirk. Probably some lowball offer from a developer. He was about to delete it when the numbers jumped out at him from the screen. He blinked, read them again, and then sat bolt upright, nearly spilling his coffee. The offer was so far beyond astounding, it bordered on the absurd. It was, as Jasper had predicted, a clean, all-cash deal with a 30-day close and no contingencies. The buyer was a mysterious entity called Argentum Holdings. Chad's email was practically vibrating with excitement, filled with exclamation points and phrases like "once in a lifetime" and "unheard of." Mitchell's first reaction was suspicion. Who would pay this much? It had to be a mistake. But as he read on, his ego began its insidious work. Of course, the offer was this high. He was Mitchell Sterling. He had an eye for quality. He had bought at the perfect time, and was planning the perfect renovations. This wasn't a mistake. It was validation. Some savvy international billionaire, probably from Dubai or Hong Kong, recognized the intrinsic untouchable value of his property. "Olivier," he yelled, a wide, triumphant grin spreading across his face. "You are not going to believe this." Olivia wobbled out of her downward dog. "What is it, babe?" "Someone wants to buy the house," he said, trying to sound casual, as if this happened every day. "For a price that would make your head spin." "But I thought we were redoing the pool," she pouted. "Forget the pool," he laughed. "With this money, we can buy a new house and build a pool with a water slide that goes directly into the master bedroom if you want. This is a sign. The universe is telling me I'm a genius." He called Chad immediately. "Who are they, Chad? Who is Argentum Holdings?" "No idea," Chad said, his voice buzzing. "Totally firewalled. The offer came through a top-tier law firm in Century City. These are serious people, Mitchell. They don't want their names out there. This is how the 1%ers do business. Silent. Fast. Overwhelming force. I'm telling you, you will never see a number like this again." The phrase "overwhelming force" sealed it. That's what Mitchell had always wanted to be. He saw himself in that description. He accepted the offer that same day. The 30-day escrow period was for Mitchell a month-long victory lap. He was insufferable. He bragged to everyone at the golf club, at business lunches, at charity galas. He only attended to be seen. He spoke of the anonymous whale who had recognized his brilliance, spinning the tale until he was the hero of his own financial epic. He felt a deep, satisfying sense of vindication. He had shed his past Celine and was now rocketing into an even more glorious future. The house, once the symbol of his victory in the divorce, was now the catalyst for his ascent into the financial stratosphere. To celebrate his genius and bid a final grand farewell to the house, he decided to throw a party. Not just any party, but an extravagant, over-the-top affair. He hired caterers from Spargo, a live band, and valets to handle the endless stream of luxury cars. The guest list was a curated collection of his business associates, fair-weather friends, and the social climbers who orbited his world. It was a party to celebrate his closing a chapter. And then, fueled by champagne and arrogance, he had an idea that felt like the pinnacle of psychological warfare, a final crushing blow to his pathetic ex-wife. He would invite Celine. He composed the text message with meticulous cruelty, savoring each word. "Hey Celine, having a little farewell bash at the house on the 15th before the new owners take over. I know it's short notice, but I thought you might want to come and see it one last time. Say a proper goodbye to the life you could have had. No hard feelings." He hit send and imagined her receiving it in her sad little apartment. He pictured her pain, her jealousy. Her attendance would be the ultimate spectacle. The ghost of Christmas past, weeping silently while he toasted to his brilliant future. It was perfect. Meanwhile, in her sad little apartment, Celine read the text message and felt a chill run down her spine. Jasper was sitting across from her in her small but tastefully decorated living room, sipping a glass of water. She read the message aloud, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Jasper listened, his expression unreadable. "He is a caricature of a man," he said simply. "Utterly predictable. I can't go, Jasper. I can't watch him gloat like that. I don't think I'm strong enough." Jasper set his glass down and leaned forward, his dark eyes meeting hers. "You are more than strong enough. You are not going there to be a spectator, Celine. You are going as the guest of honor. You just don't know it yet." "What are you talking about? The party is on the 15th, he said, And if Isabel's timeline is correct, the deed officially records and the funds transfer on the morning of the 14th. By the time he opens his doors for that party, the house will no longer be his. It took a moment for the implication to sink in. You mean? I mean he will be throwing a party in our house, Jasper said, a slow, dangerous smile finally gracing his lips. And I think it's only proper that the new owners make an appearance. We won't stay long, just long enough to collect the keys. The sheer glorious audacity of the plan took her breath away. It was a checkmate, so elegant, so devastating, it felt like something out of a movie. The fear she had felt moments before was replaced by a surge of adrenaline. She looked at Jasper, at the quiet confidence in his eyes, and knew she could do it. She picked up her phone and typed her reply to Mitchell. "Thank you for the invitation, Mitchell. I wouldn't miss it for the world." The night of the party was a quintessential Los Angeles spectacle. Valets in crisp red jackets scurried to park a river of gleaming metal. The sound of champagne corks popping and a live jazz trio spilled out from the open doors of 1217 Sycamore Lane. Inside, the house was packed with the kind of people who measured worth in carat size and stock portfolios. Mitchell Sterling was in his element, holding court near the massive fireplace. He was wearing a ridiculously expensive Tom Ford jacket, a champagne flute in one hand, Olivia glued to the other. He was magnanimous, expansive, a king bidding farewell to his first castle before moving on to build an empire. "It's bittersweet, of course," he said, to a cluster of sycophants, his voice resonating with false modesty. "A lot of memories here, but you can't be sentimental in this business." The offer was just too good to ignore. The new owner, whoever he is getting a gem. He kept glancing towards the door, waiting. He needed Celine to arrive. The party, the success, the fawning praise, it was all an appetizer. Her witnessing it was the main course. When Selena finally walked in, a hush fell over the group of people nearest the door. They all knew who she was. They had all been silent witnesses to the divorce, choosing sides with the person who kept the house. She wasn't wearing a gown dripping with diamonds. Instead, she had chosen a simple, elegant black dress that clung to her figure, her hair styled in soft waves, her makeup understated but flawless. She didn't look broken or pathetic. She looked serene. She looked powerful. Mitchell's smile tightened. This wasn't the downtrodden woman he'd expected. He detached himself from his circle and sauntered over his movements, oozing condescension. "Celine, you came," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Brave of you, truly. Can I get you a drink? Or is champagne a little too rich for your blood these days?" Before she could answer, the ambient chatter in the room suddenly dipped. The front door had opened again, and a new guest had arrived. It was Jasper Devereaux. He didn't make a grand entrance. He didn't need to. His presence alone was an event. Men who moments before were puffing out their chests suddenly seemed to shrink. Women's eyes widened with recognition and intrigue. Jasper Devereaux did not attend parties like this. His appearance here was like a lion wandering into a petting zoo. He walked directly to Celine's side, his hand resting gently on the small of her back. He ignored Mitchell completely. "You look beautiful," he murmured, his voice for her ears only. Mitchell stared, his brain struggling to process the scene. He recognized Jasper, of course. Everyone did. What was the most powerful man in the city doing here? And what was he doing with Celine? He quickly formulated a theory. She was his date. A conquest. A temporary diversion for a man like Devereaux. Mitchell decided to reassert his dominance. He puffed out his chest and extended a hand. Devereaux. Mitchell Sterling, he said, as if introducing himself to an equal. Didn't expect to see you here. Welcome to my home. Jasper finally turned his gaze to Mitchell. His eyes were cold and dismissive. He did not take Mitchell's outstretched hand. Sterling, he said, his voice flat. We're not staying. We just came by to pick up a few things. Mitchell laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. Pick up? What are you talking about? Celine doesn't have anything left here. I made sure of that. Celine looked at Mitchell, her expression no longer serene, but pitying. He's not talking about my things, Mitchell. Jasper reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and produced a single folded document. He handed it not to Mitchell, but to a prominent real estate lawyer, David Chen, who was standing nearby, watching the exchange with fascination. David, Jasper said calmly, "You'll recognize this, a grant deed. Recorded with the County of Los Angeles yesterday at 11:04 a.m. The transfer of title for this property, 1217 Sycamore Lane, from Mr. Mitchell Sterling to the new legal owner." David Chen unfolded the document. His eyes scanned it, then widened in shock. He looked from the paper to Jasper, then to Celine, and then to a pale and confused Mitchell. "My God," Chen whispered. "The grantee is Argentum Holdings." The pieces began to click into place in the minds of everyone within earshot. The whispers started spreading through the room like wildfire. Argentum Holdings. Devereaux. Celine. Mitchell's face went from tanned and confident to a sickly, ashen grey. His smug smile had vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed expression of utter disbelief. What is this?" he stammered, looking at Jasper. "Some kind of joke, I assure you. I have a far more sophisticated sense of humor," Jasper said coolly. He then turned his full attention to Mitchell, his voice dropping but cutting through the stunned silence of the room. "You bought this house with Celine's vision Sterling. You kept it as a trophy of your cruelty. You stood on its steps and you mocked her. You invited her here tonight to celebrate her pain. But you have made a fatal miscalculation. You assumed her value was tied to you. You were wrong." He gestured around the magnificent room. "So I want to thank you for hosting this lovely party. It's a wonderful housewarming gift. But the hour is getting late." "And the owner of the house," he said, looking at Celine with infinite tenderness, "is getting tired." He finally looked Mitchell directly in the eye. The moment was pure distilled devastation. Now Jasper Devereaux said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "The keys." The word keys hung in the air like a death sentence. For a moment, the entire party was frozen in a tableau of shock. The jazz trio had faltered into silence. Champagne flutes were held forgotten halfway to lips. All eyes were on Mitchell Sterling. He was a statue of crumbling pride. The blood had drained from his face, leaving his expensive tan looking like a cheap orange veneer. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He looked from Jasper's implacable face to Celine's quiet, devastating composure. He looked at the deed in David Chen's hand. The trap was not just sprung. Its steel jaws were embedded in his soul. Olivia, sensing the cataclysmic shift in power, took a half step away from him, her expression one of dawning horror. She had attached herself to a king, and she was just now realizing he was nothing but a court jester in a borrowed castle. Mitchell's mind raced, desperately searching for an escape, a loophole, an explanation that didn't involve his own complete and utter humiliation. "This is insane," he finally managed to croak, his voice a hoarse whisper. "My agent, Chad, he would have told me." "Your agent told you that you had an all-cash offer from a silent, powerful buyer, Jasper countered smoothly. He was correct. He delivered you the highest bidder. His job is done. Your greed did the rest. A man near the back, a business rival Mitchell had gloated to just an hour earlier, let out a low chuckle. It was a small sound, but it broke the spell. The whispers erupted into a low roar of gossip and schadenfreude. People were pulling out their phones, not even trying to be discreet. The story was too good, the downfall too poetic. Mitchell Sterling, the master of the universe, had been publicly castrated by his ex-wife's new boyfriend, a man who could buy and sell him 1,000 times over without noticing. Humiliation washed over Mitchell in a hot, sickening wave. He wasn't just losing the house, he was losing his reputation, his status, the carefully constructed myth of his own infallibility. He was a fool. He had bankrolled his own demise and thrown a party to celebrate it. He fumbled in his pocket, his hand shaking so violently he could barely grasp the keys. They were on a heavy, pretentious silver keychain engraved with the address. He pulled them out. The metal felt impossibly heavy. He looked at Celine, a desperate, pleading look in his eyes. He was searching for a hint of the old Celine, the one who would have comforted him, the one he could have manipulated. But she was gone. In her place was a woman made of marble, her expression calm and unpitying. He didn't hand the keys to Jasper. He couldn't. In a final, pathetic act of defiance, he held them out to Celine. She looked at the keys, then at his trembling hand. She didn't snatch them. She took them gently, her fingers brushing against his. The brief contact was like an electric shock to him. It was a touch devoid of anger, but also devoid of warmth. It was a touch of finality. "Thank you, Mitchell," she said, her voice clear and steady, "for looking after the place." And that, more than anything, broke him. The quiet dignity, the lack of gloating. It wasn't a victory dance, it was a quiet, authoritative reclamation. Jasper placed his hand on Celine's back again. "I believe your guests are waiting for you to see them out," he said to Mitchell, his tone utterly dismissive. And with that, he guided Celine through the stunned crowd, which parted for them like the Red Sea. They walked out the front door and into the cool night air, leaving behind the smoldering ruins of Mitchell Sterling's life. The party was over. As the valets scrambled to bring Jasper's car around a discreet but powerful Bentley, the first of the guests began to stream out of the house, eager to escape the suffocating atmosphere of humiliation and start spreading the story. Mitchell was left standing alone in the grand entryway of a house that was no longer his, surrounded by people who were no longer his friends, with a woman by his side who was already calculating her exit strategy. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of his own ragged breathing. Later that night, long after the last guest had fled and the caterers had packed up their things with hurried, averted glances, Mitchell sat on the steps of the grand staircase. The house felt cavernous and hostile. He made a frantic call to his lawyer, who confirmed the devastating truth. The sale was legal, ironclad, and final. Argentum Holdings was a ghost, its ownership shielded behind layers of impenetrable corporate law. The money was in his account, a fortune that now felt like 30 pieces of silver. He had won the battle of the divorce, but he had just spectacularly and publicly lost the war. He had thrown shade at his ex-wife, completely unaware that she was standing in the sun, a sun so bright and powerful it had burned his entire world to the ground. He had lost the house, he had lost his pride, and as he looked at Olivia, who was quietly calling an Uber from the corner of the room, he knew he had lost his future. All he had left was the money and the bitter, bitter taste of his own medicine. 2 months later, the house at 1217 Sycamore Lane was transformed. The obsidian Aston Martin was gone, replaced by Celine's Lexus and Jasper's Bentley sitting side by side in the driveway, a quiet partnership. The gaudy bachelor pad furniture Mitchell had bought was donated to charity. The Moroccan tiles by the pool, once dismissed as dated, were now the centerpiece of a serene and elegant outdoor oasis. Celine hadn't just moved back in, she had reclaimed the soul of the house. She worked with an interior designer not to erase the past, but to build upon the good bones she had first envisioned. The rooms were filled with light art and the scent of fresh flowers. The ghosts were gone, replaced with the promise of new memories. She was in the garden, her hands covered in soil, as she planted lavender bushes along the stone pathway. Something Mitchell had always refused to do, calling it old lady potpourri. She felt a profound sense of peace. The house was not a trophy to her. It was a sanctuary. It was home. Jasper came out to join her, carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. He had given her the house as a gift, with no strings attached, the deed transferred solely to her name. It wasn't about possessing her or the property, it was about restoring something that had been unjustly taken. "The place looks incredible," he said, handing her a glass. "You've brought it back to life." "I'm just reminding it of what it was always supposed to be," she said, smiling. She had also started a foundation funded by a seed investment from Jasper to provide grants and support for women starting their own businesses after contentious divorces. She was no longer just Celine Vesper, the ex-wife. She was a founder, a philanthropist, an architect of her own life. The story of Mitchell Sterling's party had become a Bel Air legend, a cautionary tale whispered at cocktail parties and golf clubs. His social standing had evaporated overnight. The Blackstone deal he was so proud of had come under scrutiny after his public implosion, and several key partners had quietly backed away. Olivia had left him the very next day, her Instagram suddenly featuring a new, older, and far more stable-looking benefactor. Mitchell had been forced to move into a high-end but soulless rental condo in Century City. It was luxurious by any normal standard, but to him it was a prison. From his balcony, if he strained his eyes, he could just see the hazy silhouette of the Bel Air Hills where his old life, his real life, still existed without him. He was rich, but he was irrelevant. A man haunted by the ghost of a house he had stolen and lost in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. Celine rarely thought of him anymore. Her victory hadn't been in his destruction, but in her own reconstruction. She took a sip of her iced tea and looked at the house, her house gleaming in the afternoon sun. She looked at Jasper, a man who saw her strength instead of her weakness, who built her up instead of tearing her down. "Do you think he ever drives by?" she asked, the thought occurring to her for the first time in weeks. Jasper considered it for a moment. "I imagine he does," he said, "but it doesn't matter. He can't hurt you anymore. He's just another tourist, now looking at the pretty house on the hill." And he was right. Celine was no longer the ghost of Sycamore Lane. She was its heart, and she was finally, irrevocably free. 6 months after the party, Mitchell Sterling discovered that money could not buy silence. The fortune that had landed in his bank account, the supposed proof of his genius, had become an anchor, dragging him down into a gilded abyss. He lived in the glass and steel condo in Century City, a place with panoramic views of a city that had utterly rejected him. The view was a constant mocking reminder of the world he could see but no longer touch. His days bled into one another in a haze of expensive whiskey and paranoid solitude. He'd tried to re-enter the game to leverage his new capital into a comeback. He'd approached venture capitalists with bold new ideas, only to be met with polite, icy smiles and non-committal murmurs. The calls were never returned. His name, once a key, was now a deadbolt. The story of his humiliation was not just gossip, it was a business liability. No one wanted to partner with a man who could be so easily, so publicly outmaneuvered. He was a laughingstock, a fool who had sold his crown for a handful of beans. The silence was the worst part. His phone, which once buzzed incessantly with calls and invitations, now lay dormant for days at a time. The fair-weather friends had scattered like pigeons. He tried calling Chad, his old real estate agent, hoping for a sliver of connection to his former life. The call went to voicemail. Chad, who had hailed him as a king, now treated him like a leper. His nights were filled with a masochistic ritual. He would open his laptop and search for her name. Celine Vesper. Her name was now linked to the Phoenix Foundation, the non-profit she had established. He'd scroll through photos of her at charity events, cutting ribbons, standing at podiums. She glowed. She looked younger, happier, more vibrant than he had ever seen her. And always somewhere in the background or by her side was Jasper Devereaux, a silent, formidable presence. Mitchell's anger curdled into a desperate, obsessive need for something. An apology, an explanation, a confrontation. He didn't know. He only knew that his life had become a before and after picture, and the line between them was Celine. One crisp November evening, he saw an announcement for a fundraising gala for the Phoenix Foundation. It was being held at the Getty Center, a place of art culture and high society, a place he used to belong. Fueled by a toxic mix of self-pity and whiskey, he decided he would go. He wasn't invited, of course, but he bought a ticket online under a false name. He told himself he just wanted to see, to understand. But deep down, he was a moth flying toward a flame, desperate to feel something other than the cold emptiness of his condo. The gala was a stunning success. The central courtyard of the Getty was tented and lit with thousands of fairy lights creating a celestial canopy. Celine stood at the entrance greeting guests. She wore a deep emerald gown, her shoulders bare, her smile genuine and warm. She was the picture of grace and power, the undisputed center of this universe. Jasper was a few feet away, engaged in a quiet conversation with the mayor, but his eyes frequently darted to Celine, a look of profound admiration on his face. Celine was in her element, speaking with donors, with the women her foundation had helped, with the city's most influential figures. She spoke about second chances, about turning pain into purpose. She told a story not her own, but that of a woman who had used a Phoenix grant to start a catering business after leaving an abusive marriage. The story was full of hope, and the crowd was captivated. Celine had found her voice, a voice Mitchell had spent a decade trying to silence. Mitchell watched from the shadows, hiding behind a marble pillar, a glass of champagne trembling in his hand. He looked gaunt, his expensive suit hanging loosely on his frame. The confidence had been stripped away, leaving behind a raw, twitching nerve of resentment. This should have been his world. She had built this on the ashes of his life. As the evening wound down, he saw his chance. Jasper was pulled into a conversation on the other side of the courtyard. Celine was standing alone for a moment, looking out over the city lights. Mitchell straightened his tie, took a fortifying gulp of champagne, and walked towards her. Celine. She turned, her smile faltering for just a fraction of a second as she registered who it was. She recovered instantly, her expression becoming one of polite neutrality. It was the same look she'd given him from her car all those months ago, but now it held a different weight. Then it had been a shield. Now it was a wall. "Mitchell," she said, her voice calm, "I wasn't aware you were a supporter of the Foundation." The polite barb hit its Mitchell. "I'm not," he said, his voice rough. "I came to talk to you." "We have nothing to talk about." "Don't we?" He sneered, the old arrogance flickering weakly. "You destroyed my life. You and him. You took everything." Celine looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time, she felt a sliver of pity. He was a ghost, a man so consumed by what he'd lost that he couldn't see what he had thrown away. "I didn't take anything from you, Mitchell," she said, her voice soft but firm, devoid of the anger he so desperately wanted to provoke. "You sold it. You had a choice. You could have had a home, a life we built together, but you valued the money more. That was your choice, not my action. He manipulated me. It was a setup." Mitchell hissed, his voice cracking. "Was it? Or did he simply understand you better than you understand yourself? He knew your pride and your greed were your weakest points. He didn't force you to do anything. He just held up a mirror and you ran headlong into it." She took a small step back, creating more distance between them. "I used to hate you, Mitchell. For years your cruelty was the loudest thing in my head. But now, I just feel sorry for you." That was the final blow. His anger, his sneering, his accusations, they were all predicated on the idea that he still mattered to her, that he still had the power to hurt her. Her pity told him he was irrelevant. "You feel sorry for me," he choked out, his face contorting in a mask of pain and rage. "Look at you playing the saint. You think you're better than me." "I think I'm happier," she replied simply, "and that has nothing to do with you anymore. I hope you find some peace, Mitchell. I really do. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have guests to attend to." She turned and walked away without a second glance, leaving him standing there as if he were a stranger who had asked for directions. He watched her merge back into the glittering crowd, where she was immediately embraced by friends, by supporters, by Jasper, who put a protective arm around her waist. Mitchell Sterling was utterly, completely alone. He was a king, with no subjects, no castle, and no one to blame but himself. He turned and stumbled away from the light of the party, back towards the shadows, the echoes of his shattered life, the only company he had left. The money in his bank account was just a number. It couldn't buy back his name, it couldn't buy back his pride, and it certainly couldn't buy back the woman who had just shown him the true meaning of being poor. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a billionaire's money, it was a story about value. Mitchell Sterling thought value was in a price tag, a deed, a symbol of what he could take. He was wrong. True value was in Selena's vision, her resilience, and her refusal to stay broken. Karma, as they say, has a way of balancing the books, and for Mitchell, the bill came due in the most public and humiliating way possible. He didn't just lose a house, he lost the woman who made it a home, and in the process revealed to the world just how small he truly was. What did you think of Mitchell's ultimate downfall? Let us know in the comments below. If you love stories of epic revenge and karmic justice, make sure to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who would enjoy it, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel and ring the bell so you never miss another dramatic tale. Thanks for watching. Narrator, what's worse than losing your dream home in a bitter divorce? How about having your arrogant ex-husband, the man who took it all, mock you for the simple life you now lead? For Celine Vesper, this was her new, painful reality. Every day, her ex Mitchell lived in the palace they built together while she was left with memories and his scorn. But what Mitchell didn't know, as he stood on the marble steps of his castle, throwing shade at his ex-wife, was that the ink was already drying on a contract that would turn his world upside down. He thought he was looking at his past. He had no idea he was talking to the new lady of the house.